Morning in Happy Valley. It's always a great morning, even when it's a little overcast like it is this AM. And this is Connect Happy Valley AM. You see how I brought those two things together, Woodman?
Good morning, Chris.
Hey,
Slice of paradise,
did you not
ready
have
to
your
go.
coffee yet this morning or what? I'm on cheese shop number 3. You seem a little sluggish. We got to pick it up.
No, I'm ready to go. Let's go. It's Friday in Happy Valley, our slice of paradise right here.
Yes, so we want to welcome the audience. This is our first full week of the pilot season 0 of Connect Happy Valley AM. A reminder, we're coming to you live, as we typically will be, with maybe a few remotes in our future here on this program from Pine Grove Hall in Pine Grove Mills, Pennsylvania, a 100-plus-year-old building, a former Oddfellows Hall, now repurposed into one of the coolest places to come experience live shows, live music, live talks, and get a great meal. So go to pinegrovehall.com to plan your next encounter with one of Happy Valley's charming, distinctive locations, of which we have many, Greg.
We have many, and we're right next door to Flower and Stone, which is available for breakfast. They have a walk-up window for coffee. And so we're out here 10 minutes from downtown State College, and it's good to be here in the Oddfellow building, built in 1901. And then fellowship right here.
Explain to people what the Oddfellows are. See, we reference all these things that I think you and I assume are common knowledge, and they most definitely are not. So people are listening to this, and they're like, what? Was it like for weirdos? What's the Oddfellows? What was that?
Well, I am not a historian like you, but from what I understand is in the 1640s or so in England, groups started, social capital of various apprenticeships, I guess, glassblowers or metallurgy or whatever. And this one group of men, they weren't tied to any trade. So they said, we're Oddfellows, let's start our own social fraternity. You know, and I'm a big fan of looking at how democracy and these secret societies started in the case of fraternities, in these Oddfellow groups, the Kiwanis, the Rotary. You know, my whole last 30 years of my life has been influenced by the book Bowling Alone, where Robert Putnam, the author, was talking about the demise of social capital and the demise of connection and the demise of the attendance and the recruitment in the Rotary and the Kiwanis and fraternities and even faith-based organizations like the Knights of Columbus. So I think we're here on a stage in the Oddfellow building in large part for my desire and my belief, and try to see where the puck is going or the trend, is that there'd be a resurgence of social capital and a resurgence of connection. So no coincidence that we're here in the Oddfellow building advocating and amplifying connection, human connection.
So it started as basically a guild for the dispossessed and then evolved into, in the 20th century, just a social club on the order of like Rotary or the Elks or the Kiwanis, yes?
Exactly. And there's an Oddfellows one flourishing out in Center Hall. You talked about Center Hall yesterday. So yes, these are still going around the world and around the country. It started, I believe, men only, and then the female version were called the Rebeccas. And then I believe they merged.
I think Oddfellows might be stronger branding just because it's so memorable. Like the Rebecca's kind of sounds like the Karens to me. I don't know if you want that. But I love that you took it back to the 1690s, which I got to admit I was not prepared for. But it does underscore how deeply embedded in our nature this desire to associate and to form tribes, which evolve into clubs and become societies. And what's interesting to me about Bowling Alone, which is a book probably a lot of folks have heard of, but has had a second life in the internet era, is that it was written way before the social atomization that resulted from smartphones and social media and, you know, now definitely remote work and Zoom meetings, and we don't even need to be in the same conference room in our work setting, let alone in a third place just for enjoyment. And so I think if Putnam was onto something in the 90s, just looking at what, you know, television and video games were doing to put cracks in that foundation of human nature that manifests itself for centuries and centuries with very little external intermediary between human beings and their desire to gather. I think it does stand to reason when you talk about where the puck is going, that now that we have so many artificial pressures working against that, that the rubber band is going to snap back at some point, because we have millions of years of evolved human nature versus like less than the blinking of an eye in comparison and the overall time horizon of how our internal hardware and software is built. At one point or another, all of these artificial, technological forces conspiring to say, be on your own, be an army of one, and don't associate with each other are going to provoke a pretty potent backlash. And maybe we're starting to see the beginnings of that.
And that's why I think there's a big zeitgeist, called a trend, that to connect again. And we survived those millions of years because we did biologically gather together for survival. You know, the lone wolf, what's the story of the lone wolf? Does not survive. You know, and so we, even if we didn't like each other thousands of years ago, we had to band together to survive. We had to gather and be a tribe and be a co-op and be collective. All these cool words that we're talking about in college sports, collectives and co-ops. And so anyway, the Oddfellow building and being here, I think is more than a symbol. It's the signal to me of how these guys built this building as a collective, as a co-op. We call it the Amish kind of co-op theory, and we live amongst the Amish here. And it's fun to be in this slice of paradise because it's all right here in William Penn's Keystone State.
So we talked yesterday, Greg, about some of the work I've been doing to try to advocate for responsible conservation and safeguarding of some of the most precious and rare and irreplaceable natural resources present on the property of the former Rockview Prison. And I had a chance to talk with some public officials about that yesterday. It was a good meeting. I think mostly the discussions I have had about that up to and including this week, where I did a public forum at SCLO Library on Wednesday night and had some meetings about it yesterday, have been positive. I do think people recognize that the solution to that property is not to maximize its dollar value today at the cost of tomorrow and every day thereafter. It's getting everybody on the same page, and I think we're fortunate here in Happy Valley to be blessed with a lot of really smart, really dynamic, talented, motivated people, and you just got to get them together and you got to get them talking and good things will happen. That's the story of Penn State, and that's the story of Happy Valley. It is fascinating to me, though, man, going back to the mission of this show and where we want to take it and connect Happy Valley, connecthappyvalley.com, just how siloed. I know I've mentioned this before, but the community really is. It's amazing to me that we can live side by side, and in some cases literally, and nevertheless, College Avenue, that line that literally bisects the town and the gown, the campus and the community, it may as well be the Berlin Wall sometimes.
Well, and that's why we're here. We have the belief that we could become the most connected community, breaking down the silos, integrating the silos, into a signal in the noise. And we're going to have discussion boards that'll be heavily moderated. But our goal is the Oddfellow goal of fellowship. And, we're living, it may be the Berlin Wall, but we're neighbors. I live in College Heights, administrators. Neely, the president, lives 2 blocks from my house. This morning, I was down at Sunset Park, and walked by Neely's presidential mansion, and Sue Paterno was pulling out at 7 a.m. this morning. We're all together, and so we're just trying to be the signal in the noise that, I learned in marketing that, divisions started in companies. In General Motors org chart, the VP of this division, the VP of this division. But the word division means to divide. And to integrate divisions, where the parts, the whole becomes more valuable than the parts or whatever, and so all of marketing
The whole becomes more than the sum of its parts.
Yes, and so when corporations militarily formed as these scaling organizations became global, we started setting up in org charts divisions, and then we wonder why there's a lack of innovation, because you have to integrate And the word integrate, Latin root word is integrity. So we've broken down the integrity often of corporations by forming divisions, which means the divide. And so back to how we got here is why there's Berlin walls, why we're in bubbles, why we're in silos, why we have outsourced institutionally everything that allows us to be lone wolves in being independent. And then social media came along, and so anyway, we're here, with the belief that integration is the form of integrity, which is going to make a stronger town, a stronger community. And we're trying to activate the hearts of the residents here. Someone kind of emailed me yesterday after yesterday's show about our emphasis on tourism and bringing the alums back, Disney World North. And I got a lot of pushback saying, no, you're not the tourist, the visitor bureau, you're the resident bureau. Connect Happy Valley should be the resident bureau, that we're talking about our neighbors. We're talking about the people who live here, and we want to activate them year-round into these cultural assets that, oh, by the way, the visitors love, and only love because they come back and experience the indigenous, locally owned venues, restaurants, coffee shops. So anyway.
What you're saying, Greg, is playing exactly into what I wanted to talk about and expound upon a little bit more in the first half of today's show. And that is this theme I have just started evolving as you and I have been talking in these extemporaneous conversations as we explore what the format of this program is going to be long term. And that's the power of and. Reject the false binary of either or. We're not either the tourist bureau or the resident bureau. We are storytellers of Happy Valley. We're trying to tell the people of the valley their own story in a way that is inspiring and empowering. I want to get people to love the place better by being able to see it through my eyes. And so yes, 100%, that is about getting the people to live here, to look in the mirror when they wake up in the morning and ask themselves the question, why? Why is tourism one of the fastest growing economic pillars in my home? There must be something that is drawing people from outside the area to want to come here and experience it. And I'm swimming in it every single day, and to have some appreciation and gratitude and a moment of Zen about that. But yeah, we also want more people to come and experience it. We want those tourists to come in. We can be everything. And that's the beauty of the area. And its power is encapsulated in this word and, rejecting this small thinking that says we can only be this. There's town or gown. No, town and gown. The community is an asset on Penn State's balance sheet. And there's not a lot of big picture thinking at the university that cares to recognize that, because it's not a problem for them today. But it's going to be in the future. Someday is on the horizon, Greg, because I keep coming back to this. What is going to be the value proposition of residential college education over the next 25 years? Place has got to be a part of it. Soft skills development has got to be a part of it. It's teaching you to be a better human being so that when the next version of the coolest new robot rolls off the assembly line and changes the world, you're best equipped to adapt to whatever comes next, irrespective of what you learned over 4 years in a classroom 5, 10, 25 years ago, yes?
Yes, and when I wake up and I look at my aura, which is flashing rapidly pictures of my first grandson, Alan, I ask his parents, and I look at that picture and I wonder, in 17 years, will he be attending, hopefully Penn State, but what will that be like? What will it cost, and what will be the value?
Your son and your daughter-in-law to backstop the substantial financial investment that it will require, right? There's got to be a there. So certainly, I think place is an incredibly valuable asset to Penn State's sales pitch to the Alan Woodmans of the future. I think 100% it is that. Likewise, it is the university is of inextricable importance and value to the community. And so here's what happens. Penn State comes in and largely disregards the community and its well-being and its future because it it can, which is myopic and short-sighted and foolish. Nevertheless, it is the epitome of human nature to do so. If you are in the alpha position, the concerns of your subordinate are your concerns only insofar as you choose to make them so, and so usually you don't. So then we, in the subordinate position, which I know I'm already offending some people in the community who imagine that this is an equal negotiation across College Ave, and it ain't. Penn State could, in some sense, literally put up castle walls and not think again about anything that happens to the folks outside.
But Chris, I'm not necessarily buying into this Berlin Wall, town versus gown. As I said
All right,
yesterday,
let's go. Let's have a AM debate on Connect Happy Valley A.M. live from Pine Grove Hall.
And as I said yesterday, to me, Penn State in this great summertime is the ocean, and downtown State College is like the boardwalk and a couple streets off. And I think it's great that the Nittany Residence Club is erecting $70 million to $2 million condos right on Beaver Avenue, which happens to be 321 Beaver Avenue in the old Plasma Center, which is going to really help our tax base.
It's going to help our tax base and cost a lot of college kids $200 a month.
That's right.
Now they got to go out to Giant.
But, if I'm down here in Virginia Beach for a week with my family, I'm not going to look out at that ocean and get angry at it and say, it's not honoring Virginia Beach. I'm here because of Penn State, and I walked right through that campus this morning with a couple buddies, and so, like I said, right by Neely's house, and, my neighbors are administrators. So I'm not seeing the rivalry of Penn State versus Gown.
Well,
They're providing all the tailgating fields, the beautiful buildings, the Arboretum, which you talked about yesterday. Thank God Penn State's there, and we're here because of Penn State. They're not battling me.
You're preaching to the choir, brother. Like, they're not battling us. I am making a contention about how I view the state of play in this moment. And I like that you're pushing back on it because it makes for a fun conversation. But let me just ask you this. You Texas Roadhouse guy? You ever go to Texas Roadhouse?
I only support locally owned restaurants.
Yeah, all right, okay. I knew you.
Every time I've gone there, the line is so freaking long that we end up going to another restaurant.
So first of all, let me dispel a notion. Okay, the CEO of the Texas Roadhouse company ain't working on Wattle Road. Okay, that is a locally owned establishment that is staffed by people who live locally. So the balance between wonderful, distinctive, completely local, unique locations like Pine Grove Hall, which you absolutely should patronize on a regular basis. Go to pinegrovehall.com to check out the seasonal menu, the event calendar, and to book your reservations. And locally operated and owned franchises. The balance between that is part of the beauty of Happy Valley's ecosystem. So it always cracks me up when people grumble about, it's another chain restaurant coming in, as if like the CEO and the CFO are flipping the burgers and running the fryer in the back of these places. So that just cracks me up. But anyway, I love the value you get for a delicious steak at Texas Roadhouse. I'm not a big chain guy, having said all that. I do really much prefer to go to a uniquely local place like a Pine Grove Hall or an Otto's or the Tavern, or you name it, the Corner Room, whatever. Nevertheless, I love the decor inside Raising Cane's. Whoever figured out how to trick that place out actually cared about the history of the town and the place, and I'm deeply appreciative of it because they add to the character of Downtown State College. And I love the value you get for a steak at Texas Roadhouse. Buchignani, why did you bring this up? Because you are pushing back on me and my vision of how things tend to play out again and again here in the Nittany Valley, because it's not the way you view it. What I am trying to say, Greg, is to argue for our tremendous value to the community, including to the university at Connect Happy Valley and on Connect Happy Valley A.M., because you and I see the forest for the trees. We are living in a place of folks who have been, chowing down on Salisbury steak, overcooked with bad steak sauce to try to make it palatable for years, and we're offering them Texas Roadhouse. Great taste at great value. We're saying, guys, you don't have to view town gown as an adversarial campus versus community relationship. So yeah, we're offering you a better product at a great value. But your notion that that's the way things operate and that's the way things work, I think is naive and inaccurate. Absolutely. No, I think what happens is Penn State disregards the community, potentially at its long-term peril, because there is absolutely zero short-term cost to Old Main to tell every municipality, every township, every business to get bent if they want to. What could happen? Nothing, and they know it. And so, again, not an equal negotiating partnership. It's not. It's symbiotic. It is not equal. It's not equal. And so then the people in the community see that and they get pissed, justifiably, I think. And so what happens then? They say, well, I am going to find, like the terrier, every opportunity to bite your ankle out of spite. And so then Penn State, Old Main, looks at that and says, you see, here we are in our beneficence. We're providing tailgating fields and everything, the lifeblood of the community, which is absolutely correct. This place would be nothing. It would be destitute to the extent that it existed at all without Penn State. But they say, here we are, pumping the lifeblood through your veins, and what do we get for it? Your disdain and your derision. So we are going to keep worrying about our side of College Ave, and you all keep worrying about yours. And it becomes this self-defeating death loop that misses the potential of and that you and I, Greg, are uniquely positioned to see, appreciate, and to be acolytes spreading the feel-good gospel of not town versus gown, town plus gown. That's my assertion, and you can go ahead now and tell me why I'm wrong.
No. If you study business, they say the great companies are the ones that solve the riddle between either or, and they nail the and.
And you talked about divisions.
Right.
I think right now, if you were to draw a corporate org chart of Happy Valley, it would be split up into divisions with vice presidents who never talk to one another and a CEO who doesn't understand how supply chain is directly connected to customer service, which is directly connected to marketing. That's my assertion. And I think on this program, we can be the outside consultants who let the decision makers view their operation through a different lens.
Well, next weekend, we are weekend here this weekend here in Happy Valley. We have alums coming in from all over the world to live on campus, to experience Penn State as adults, which is great. Next weekend, we have the 4th of July, and we have one of the best fireworks in the world.
It was at one time the largest all-volunteer fireworks display on the planet.
And so that's also the 250th birthday. And so we talk a lot about the revolution, the 250th anniversary, Ben Franklin, John Adams. They used to sleep with the window open. I don't know if you know that.
Yes, and I am aware of that story.
It's well known that they slept naked with the window open, Franklin and Adams. I can imagine
like the Europeans, they had no air conditioning back then.
Exactly. It was very functionally made sense. But anyway, we talk about either or, the power of and, the magic of and, efficiency versus effectiveness. That's another paradox. Most companies want to be efficient and they lose sight sometimes of effective. And so if we're going to be the signal in the noise, or we're going to try to attempt to be Thomas Paine with our app and our website in this hour show, which we're going to expand to 2 hours and have guests, and I would love to have Neely as a guest. I certainly want to have Sue Paterno coming on because the big Rise Above event that she is hosting July 25th. Get your tickets, $125 at the Penn State or July 25th. You get your
tickets at what website?
Rise Above Ability Athletes or something. You'll figure it out. We'll go to our website.
How about I look it up while you keep talking?
Go to our website. Terry Smith is the keynote speaker. Mike Reed, the original Nittany Lion, Grammy Award winning, Stranger in My House, will be playing live. It's going to be a wonderful evening, July 25th. But if we're going to be the Thomas Paine and try to integrate and amplify the benefits of a co-op of town and gown and all the surrounding areas and the alums and everybody coming together into an integration of the true We Are Penn State, yes, that is our vision, that is our idea, that is our concept, and we're going to be using modern technology to do it. And we can't wait for the user-generated comments to come pouring in so we can have a dialogue. We don't want to be broadcasting. This thing's going to be using the power of social media and message boards to talk about how we can be the and connected valley. And so I love your fire, your passion this morning.
Oh, I love watching you smirk and occasionally wince while I speak hard and, in my opinion, very obvious truths about some people would call them pain points. Some people would call them weaknesses. I choose to contextualize them as tremendous opportunities.
They are opportunities
to optimize our just
reach our
virtually
potential, to
unending
optimize.
Storehouse of value.
Right. Give
to
the
tap
website.
the oil.
Give the website.
So yes, the correct website, just so folks know, and again, this is going to be well worth your time, well worth your ticket price to support the Ability Athletes program at Penn State, which is amazing and a great cause. It's PennStateRiseAbove.org. And as you mentioned, Terry Smith is going to be the keynote speaker. And to me, talking about the story of the Nittany Valley, Terry now has cemented himself as one of the great characters in that story of his age. I have just fallen in love with this idea of the son of a Penn Stater whose dad changed the trajectory of his life, coming from an economically disadvantaged Western Pennsylvania community and accessing opportunity through his Penn State education, and then raising a son who was blessed with the ability to play Division I athletics and went to his dad's alma mater and played for Joe Paterno, and then followed in his mentor's footsteps into coaching, and as a high school coach, sent his stepson to play for Joe at an inflection point in his career that probably saved the program and Joe's career and his reputation, and that was Justin King, the #1 recruit in Pennsylvania, one of the top recruits in America, coming here alongside the #1 overall recruit, Derek Williams, and being the speed in the power and speed combo that led Penn State back from the wilderness to finish #3 in the country and win the Big Ten. And then to end up on the staff at his alma mater, and in a moment when the program needed him most, to step up and channel the teaching and the wisdom of Joe, and as now both a son and a father of Penn State alumni and an alum himself, to have stood on those sidelines, steadied the ship, and then bridged the transition into the next era of the program. Like, that is a really remarkable story. And so to get Terry as your keynote was a big win for you guys.
Well, when we talk about integration, the Latin root word of integrity, if you look at that page right there, you have Matt Campbell's going to be at the event. Now, Terry's the keynote speaker, but Matt Campbell's coming to the event. Sue Paterno is the ultimate connector. Terry's a connector. Now Matt's a connector, as we're all loving what he's brought to the program, bringing back all the alums back by decade. We got Mike Reed there. Steve Jones is going to be there. Dana Harris is Franco's wife. Her and Sue are hosting the event for these adaptive athletes here who compete. It's just but it's unifying the brand of Penn State. We were a house divided. And you talk about town versus gown.
Now you can make me smirk and wince when you talk about division. Go ahead.
Yeah, so the brand
but
is
real
back,
talk.
The brand is back together, and as a student of consumer marketing and branding, it just warms my heart that, the house divided is coming back together, and the value system is intact. It's success with honor. It's the grand experiment continues. It's our drive to be a #1 university. Seems to be the North Star is there once again. And it was lost, frankly, for the last 10 years.
I think the opportunity to reclaim navigation by the North Star is there. I'm not ready to go that it's back yet. We'll see. It's going to be a bumpy road. It is a very challenging environment on both sides of the house. It's challenging in the world of college football right now. Everything that I love most about the sport, everything that, as far as I can tell, Matt Campbell prioritizes as to why he stays here versus going to the NFL is in peril. And as we've talked about on previous episodes of this program, Connect Happy Valley A.M., 9 to 10 a.m. Monday through Friday, live from Pine Grove Hall on the Connect Happy Valley YouTube channel. All of higher ed is in some choppy waters right now. So I think the potential is there to reclaim that spirit you wrote about in your book about Penn State in the 80s, Why Penn State, which you can buy at whypennstate.com or find on Amazon. But I don't think we're there yet. I think it's going to require a lot more action, a lot more imagination, and a lot more dedication from, again, smart, incredible, hardworking people, which we have in abundance in this area. But that doesn't guarantee anything. All it gives you is the opportunity. It's on us to seize it, and we'll see. Maybe we will, maybe we won't. Penn State's story tells us that when the opportunity presents itself, most of the time we do, but it's never guaranteed. I love that quote by Reagan, American independence, only ever one generation away from extinction. It's the same with anything like that that's precious and rare.
Well, my hope and again, studied, attempt to teach a class for 20 years, is when you know your North Star, that's 9/10 of the battle. When you have crystallized clarity of who you are and your goals and where you're going, things work their way out, versus running around with all kinds of various goals and everything's murky and it's not crystallized. That's when disintegration happens, and so I'm at peace now that things are aligned. The North Star is back. You do a history class of the history of Penn State. When people say we're back, I'm saying we're back because the North Star has been reclaimed. It's our navigational GPS, and everything flows from here.
Well, again, I'm buying your general premise, but my point, going back to Matt Campbell, he gave a talk to his Iowa State team that made me love the guy. He told his team, you have to fall in love with the process. And as you know, I'm a big process guy. I'm grateful for you for giving me a copy of Atomic Habits because it really registered with me. Okay, fall in love with the process. You understand, getting from point A to point B, success is really about hard work, and it is about habit formation, and it is about loving the daily work. It's about committing to the process. And so while I agree with you that the ingredients for a renaissance of Happy Valley and Penn State are at our disposal right now, I don't want to say I'm skeptical. I'm just saying the jury is still out as to whether or not we as a community writ large can commit to and fall in love with the process to take advantage of them. And guess what, Woodman? The pressure is on the two dopes sitting in these chairs to be entertaining and persuasive and lovable because we're evangelists. We are the outside consultants coming in, hopefully not like in Deloitte McKinsey style, stealing millions of dollars to tell you something you already knew, but to provide some real insight and some real guidance and some energy to catalyze optimizing everything at our disposal in this community on both sides of what is far too often, in my opinion, a town-gown divide at the moment. That's it. You got to be master diplomats, master evangelists. You got to change hearts and minds with the power of your words and your ideas and your wit and charm.
Well, we talked earlier.
Terrible news for Happy Valley if you take a look at this pair of dopes, right?
Well, we talked earlier in the week about the famous parable, the Stein-Metz X on the right pipe. So when you say things are choppy, and I say once you have your North Star, once you have your crystallized goal and your crystallized vision, and you have your why, it makes it, I think it's 9/10 of everything. You'll figure out how to achieve it. And Matt Campbell's figuring it out by everything he's doing in his process since the first day he landed here in Happy Valley. And the fact that he's going to be at this event, and Terry's the keynote speaker, and Sue Paterno's there. So when you say it's choppy, it's back to the Stein-Metz X. Like what you measure is what you get. And this is where the subjective aspects that we as fans or we as residents or we as visitors or we as alums, the keyboard warriors who love the recruiting and to complain on what are we measuring? And when you say it's choppy, That's the value judgments we make, is what is Penn State to you? What is success with honor? What is the grand experiment? What is the essence and the feelings and emotions that we as a community, as we try to bond this community together with the signal and the noise, what we measure is what we get. When you say it's choppy, what do you mean it's choppy ahead? Is that wins and losses? Is that the caliber of graduates we're putting through in this age of NIL? Is it the feeling you had at the Nebraska game last year when we came back and beat State High grad Matt Rule's team, where everyone I know said they sat in that stadium and they said, we're back. You know, Terry was leading us, the play there, the scrappy, the Pennsylvania grittiness. You know, what is that?
See, it's funny. I did not view that as we're back. I viewed that as this is, I somehow, I walked through a portal and I traveled in time to live in the past at a time of a better, more coherent vision for what is college football. Why does it exist? Why is it a part of this community? And why should you care? And I get to live in it for 3 hours, and then I am going to be sucked back into the present. So you better enjoy it, because there is no promise you will get this again as a living, breathing human. So I don't know. Again, I think the jury is still very much out. And to go back to your Steinmetz analogy, which, just to summarize for folks, basically a guy who came in and through very little time invested, but decades of experience, repaired machinery for Henry Ford. The problem there, in terms of that being a functional analogy for where we are, and let's just say in college football right now, is that machine was designed to work. That machine was engineered for success, and it just had a malfunction that needed to be repaired. When I look at Matt Campbell coming into Penn State and embracing that this is an institution that has a long-established culture that allows him to build a program the way he wants to, and taking the team to the Children's Hospital in Hershey. And I just was talking to somebody who's dealing with their internship coordinator, who came with Matt from Iowa State and was just gushing about how genuine and authentic the commitment of a Matt Campbell program is, already evident from top to bottom, to creating life-changing experiences for the kids who come here to be Nittany Lions. The whole machinery in the Steinmetz analogy is now designed to not make cars. It's designed to make the conveyor belt run in reverse. Everything that we are building college football to do in 2026 is at odds with that vision of character formation and preparing young men for life. It is about chewing them up and spitting them out and setting them up for long-term failure and bribing them to participate with short-term financial gains, which for most of them will be gone before they hit their mid-20s.
Well, the general manager of our program sat in that chair just 2 weeks ago, right here in Pine Grove Hall. You were hosting, along with Pine Grove Hall, with the Happy Valley United, and that gentleman said, before we recruit or pass off payment to these young men, we want to know their character. And, you know, and a gentleman I was sitting with, Frank, asked him after, how much time do you spend on character? And he said, a lot, you know, and he said it with great emphasis. So.
And here's the reality. Here's the harsh reality. I love all of that. It speaks to my heart. I represent a minority that is in all likelihood a vast minority. And so the proof is going to be in the pudding this season and over the next several seasons. Can team building and player development and emphasis on character be spending tens of millions of dollars on speed and athleticism? Maybe it can, because we've seen over and over and over again in the world of sports, when you just cobble together a de facto all-star team, the inability of the talents to play together and to play 11 as one does cost you between the lines. So maybe it'll work out. But if it doesn't, all the hospital visits and all the character formation and all the success with honor minus the success and all of the internships aren't going to mean a damn because the majority will be sending Matt Campbell to the unemployment line. That's just that's the reality of it. Now we are hoping that the dude knows how to put an X in a way that practically no one else in America other than maybe Kurt Signetti has figured out. But the odds, the math, say probably not. And so we are betting on the magic of the Nittany Valley, Holmes.
Well, I sold...
Which is a bet I'd be happy to make, and I'm here for the ride. But if we think this is going to be, smooth sailing, I just...
Well, again, it's what you measure is what
skeptical.
What you measure is what you get. And talking about the X and the X he's bringing and putting it on the pipe of Penn State football, culture eats strategy for breakfast. And he is focusing quite a bit on culture. And when I authored or curated the book, Why Penn State, it was a book about culture. It was a book about the 1980s and how culture ate strategy and ate Miami Hurricanes for breakfast and on a Friday night in Tempe, Arizona. So what Mr. Kirk Sinetti did, and he was just practicing his craft an hour and a half, 2 hours over in Indiana of Pennsylvania, he's given the blueprint. Now, Matt Campbell certainly going to be, along with the general manager, is going to follow the blueprint, the template, with an emphasis on culture. We just saw the New York Knicks have a culture-driven championship, 3 guys out of Villanova. If you study servant leadership like I do, and we talk about Terry Smith, servant leadership that can develop culture, which is the hallmark of innovation, that's what he's put back together in the brand. And frankly, if we lose 3 or 4 games, and I think that's what you're alluding to, he's going to be on the chopping block. No, he won't. Because if you live to the ethos and the history of Penn State and what we stand for and what we are means for most of the people who frankly enjoy the blue band and the Lionettes and the tailgating, even if we have 3 or 4 losses. But I think the guy's it's not going to be either or. I think he'll bring us an elite program. But more importantly, to me, as a Penn State alums who have seen what has happened to the Ivy League when people make good decisions as it relates to what's happening with football when it gets ahead of the institutional reason the land-grant university was formed, that's why I love the guy. That's why I love Terry. That's why I love Sue Paterno. That's why I love in studying leadership that we have some good leadership there. Now, we're paying Matt $9 million to bring Culture Eats strategy and we're also paying Neely, our leader at the university, and hey, note to, if we're going to be Thomas Paine, town and gown, and let's integrate. All of these things is the fun of being able to talk to you here, but it's fun to have a front row seat to all of this in what we call our slice of paradise, because even if we lose 3 or 4 games, I'm going to be happy as a fan. You may be saying, hey, he's going to be run out of here in 5 years. I would disagree, and I hope that does not happen.
And understand, I'm not saying I want him run out. What I am telling you, Greg, and this is a fun back and forth, and maybe I'm playing a little devil's advocate here just to make for a more dynamic conversation. But what I am saying is that I actually agree. For the way I enjoy college football, which is a product distinct from professional football, which I also love. But I already watch Eagles on Sunday. I don't need them replicated on Saturday. I want something different, and it's always been something different since its inception. I'm in the minority. I would be. Listen, if this is a place that actually cares about the human beings that become Nittany Lions and put on that blue and white and continue the tradition and develops them as young men. And it doesn't win every single game, but I'm actually proud of the product on and off the field. I would be okay with it. If I felt like we were being led by a good man who cared about his players and viewed this as a co-educational experience to the extent that it can be while also being a big business and threading the needle of that difficult balancing act, just like Joe Pa did, or in the spirit of that, I'd be okay with it. And there are thousands of paying customers who would probably love to see me burned at the stake just for having the temerity vocalize that view that doesn't elevate victory on the field uber alles. Because ultimately, at the end of the day, the reason why we are sports fans is because we can experience victory by proxy following our teams. We can vicariously live through our team's success on the field and get through our lives with a little bit more ease and a tad more dopamine because the Eagles won on Sunday, the Nittany Lions won on Saturday. And when we are deprived of that, especially when we're heading back into the office and the Ohio State or the Michigan or the Oregon grad in there is giving it to us, and we were miserable on Saturday and we feel worse on Monday morning because there's some obnoxious note left on our keyboard, it makes us angry. And there's thousands of them out there who could not give less of a crap about hospital visits in June if it doesn't equate into their ability to leave the snotty note on the Oregon grad's computer on Monday morning in October.
Well,
Facts.
Well, we talked last week about scaling brands, and we said sometimes, what do we say? You sometimes sell your soul to scale your brand. You know, so I'm about Penn State maintaining its heart, maintaining its soul. You know, and I hearken back to the quote Joe gave, you know, kind of off the record that became, he's not going to leave college football to Jackie Sherrill and Barry Switzer. You know, and we're in this tumultuous time of NIL, but can we maintain the soul of Penn State? And you reared up a little bit of exploiting athletes. You know, they're making millions perhaps, but it's a...
Almost, just real quickly, almost none are making millions. All right, we act like every kid who comes to even play Power 4 football is making generational, life-changing money, and that's nonsense. It's not even approaching truth. Are they making a great living? Are they making on a monthly basis what would be a great annual salary to most people who live in Center County? Absolutely. Is it money they're going to live on the rest of their lives? Money that their kids and their grandkids are going to live on? Absolutely not. Maybe you can do that in the NFL. Certainly not in college football.
So, true. So an lineman at Penn State might be making how much from July 1 till June
Like a
30?
Starting offensive lineman?
Yeah.
I mean, six figures.
Okay.
I'm not sneezing at it.
Right.
But this notion that we can just completely disregard the college part of college football, and we ought to be cheerleading it on because otherwise we don't want people to maximize their earning potential. I do want people to maximize their earning potential, and I don't want to kill the golden goose that allows you to come here and make like an unbelievable living off your football talent, and yet also be equipped to, at zero cost to you, receive the benefits that the hoi polloi are forced to take out six figures of non-dischargeable debt to acquire, that lets you maximize your earning potential for the 40, 50, 60 years of your life that do not involve playing a sport.
Well, and back to the either or, can we recruit athletes, meet the compensation levels of current college football? Can you have both? And what I've seen on you interviewing these players on the stage, we seemingly are threading the needle and getting both. Young men of high quality.
We're doing our best.
Young men who are going to school, young men who represent this university and will not have unsportsmanlike conduct penalties when we're playing Ohio State and lose the game.
Well, fair, although the player who got that flag is still on the roster and was referred to as one of the best players on the team by our new head coach. But anyway, that's neither here nor there.
Fail fast, fail forward. He learned his lesson.
Maybe.
Great.
Maybe.
That's character development here at a higher university.
I do believe this head coach would put him on the bench in that situation,
whole
which his
season.
predecessor did not. You love metrics. The great news is we've got a very simple, very easy to find and read metric that will assess the success in threading that needle. And do you know what it is?
Well, Mike Reed. We want to see Mike Reed's developed and come back and sing.
Nobody cares. There is a very simple metric. Do you know what the metric is?
Wins.
Yeah, it is the win-loss column. I don't love it. I am just saying this is what it is, and this is why I say the task falls to us to state the case. And we try to do it on obligatory, too, in maybe a more frivolous, fun-loving fashion, but to make the case for college football and Penn State football as something other than the NFL, where you won the Super Bowl or you failed. That's what professional football is, and I'm fine with it. Why we are in such a rush to strip everything that made college football different and special vis-a-vis comparison to pro football, I'm at something of a loss for, but, you know.
So
anyway, I was about to, you know, I love to use quotes. I was about to quote Bill Buckley, but I don't know, that's too political. So I derailed my own thought because I was like, don't quote Buckley in Happy Valley. You'll be up to your earlobes in criticism.
Well, let's talk wins. Iowa football. I went to high school with Kirk Ferentz in Upper St. Clair, South Hills of Pittsburgh. You know, he's run a very nice program. And it's no secret, Penn State was after him at a certain point to come coach here. And I know you wince, insider information.
What, as a head coach?
As a head coach, yes, in the early 2000s.
You're kidding me.
He was also up for a position at the Steelers. I mean, he is a
No, hold on.
Yeah.
I know he was up for
Don't put me on the spot here. Okay, but yes. And so...
So we got 10 minutes left. You're just going to roll in, pull the pin out of a grenade, toss it into a crowded room, and be like, oh, no, hey, sorry.
No question. Kirk Ferentz was on a short list in the early 2000s to come to Penn State. You know, he's a Western Pennsylvania young guy, and he certainly values our culture.
So you're saying as a potential replacement when Paterno retired?
Yeah.
Okay, all right. Okay.
Yeah,
sure.
But so
okay.
I certainly follow his program since I played a lot of pickup hoops and in the pickup games back in high school, you know, and I have a tremendous amount of respect for him as a human being and his program and the type of athletes he has sent on to the NFL and just the consistency of his program. Now, he has 2, 3, 4 losses just about every year.
Yep.
And it was always nice. Matt Campbell did beat him a couple years, and that's feather in our cap. He knows how to beat Kirk. We've always struggled a little bit over the years. Certainly
Indeed.
Joe did. You know, and so, you know, he's not run out of town when he has 2 losses.
And what I am telling you is if you walk into a room full of boosters and say, hey, everybody, I got a great value proposition for you. How'd you like to turn Penn State football into Iowa football? You better know where the emergency exit is.
Well, it's a good discussion. You know, I've been in the fundraising business. And
I'm wearing you out. I'm sorry.
No,
I know you don't like
not
arguing
wearing
with
me out.
me.
Actually,
I'm sorry.
I've been in for 25 years. I was Affinity Connection, still am Affinity Connection. We are hired by affinity groups to raise money. And I happened to buy a business that was in the fraternity alumni interest group business. And so I was able to raise, through multiple capital campaigns at 60 different college campuses, money from major donors of a social fraternity in today's age. And as I've lamented earlier in the week, some of the biggest gifts, $250,000, $500K, and there's a lot of opinions of what is the essence, back to the Steinmetz value of a fraternity. You know, and the gentlemen from the 50s, 60s, and 70s who would give these large gifts, to them, it was a leadership development program. To them, it was where they met their best friends, a lot of business associates, their groomsmen, golf mates for life. They learn how to be corporate leaders. They'll give a $250,000 gift. Now, the recent graduates of the last 30 years, the fraternal experience was quite a bit different. It was more Animal House, post-Animal House 1978, which kind of did cause the shift, perhaps, as you've taught me from Ben Novak. You know, and so when I'm sitting down with these people, the real money that would give a $4 million campaign down south were the people who wanted to invest in the value system of a fraternity. The people who saw it was pure pleasure, quote, pure wins, pure kegs, they wouldn't give a dime. But the people who wanted to reinvest in the value system of what the fraternity was in the 50s, 60s, 70s, and what the fellowship, the Odd Fellows Hall stands for here, and the Kiwanis and the Rotary, that was the essence of the word fraternity. They would give major gifts. So I contend the people who are crazy donors, that it has to be a national championship or bust. Yeah, that's Mark Cuban, perhaps. But I disagree. As we have this NIL world, I think a lot of money's been waiting to see if our culture comes back. And I think that money's going to be pouring in for a Matt Campbell, So anyway, the values of we have to have a national championship, we have to Lane Kiffin this thing, but that's what's so great about Signetti's success. I love when culture wins.
So culture is going to have to continue to beat strategy and athleticism, or we're going to have a Kurt Signetti could turn out to be the worst thing to happen to college football in the history of the sport. Because if you can go to Indiana and win a national championship, that's the losingest program in the history of the sport. It is going to create such impatience and such outrage, fueled by that need for the dopamine boost you get from winning football games, that it is just going to absolutely destroy the already messed up economic model of the sport, because the salaries, which is what they are, that these players are earning right now, are not based on any real transaction of market value. It's just rich people throwing money at football until they decide they don't want to do it anymore. The whole thing is a house of cards that's waiting to topple. And if this bill that is in the Senate right now doesn't get to Trump's desk and get signed into law, I think you're going to have to wait. We talked about you got to wait until you see the iceberg before you start trying to steer around it. We're going to be waiting, to mix metaphors, until we see the mushroom cloud looming over all of us in the world of college football, to be like, yeah, we probably should have fixed that when we had the chance. We should have brought Steinmetz in to draw his X before the whole damn thing blew up.
Well, we're talking AI. We're talking about the demise of higher education. We're talking always about our cultural assets, our slice of paradise of Penn State. To conclude our last couple minutes here, we've navigated tumult before. And my shining examples right here in Happy Valley is Cale Sanderson, and the other one is Guy Gadowski. Both of these guys are doing it in the not either or, they're doing it in an and I'm so excited about Matt Campbell. He gets the and. Terry Smith gets the and. It's tough love, but it starts with gratitude. It starts with culture. It starts with character. And these guys know how to form championship teams. Back to the co-op of how we've survived for thousands of years. If we band together, we are Penn State, and so.
And there were a lot of people chirping at Pat Kraft because we didn't get to the Frozen Four this past year. You bring up Guy Gadowski. I said online to a lot of these people, I said, if you guys want Guy Gadowski fired, look, you better show up to Pagula Ice Arena.
But who are these guys that in your bubble of this world? I mean, these people, they're not donors. They're not people that understand the love of Penn State.
You know what? They're not.
They're the keyboard warriors.
I'll tell you what they are.
They're nut jobs.
I'll tell you what.
And they get too much of our attention as it relates to the brand that is Penn State.
You're not inaccurate. Twitter's not real life. It's
these guys aren't real either.
It's
people who are getting paid to work all day, but they're filling up message boards every day about recruiting and,
but
and
my
going
point
after
is,
people.
They do drive the conversation, including among donors.
Not the donors, they don't.
To an extent that might surprise you in some cases.
Not the people that can integrate the town and the gown and the trustees and the people who can run this university to be put on the map as a leader of connection, of belonging, and using our assets to win and beat Purdue.
Well, you
not in football, as a university.
Yeah. Well, you are
so Allen goes to Penn State, not Purdue.
You're glass half full today. I got to be glass half empty. We can trade that back and forth, but it's fun. It's fun. You know me. I love just staking out a contrarian position and defending it as vigorously as I can.
The good news for our audience is that we're bringing structure to the show. Our MVP's behind us now. We're going to be having guests. We're going to be having segments, and we're going to be having many of the people who are running these local cultural assets on stage talking about their heart and how they're integrated into our community for the benefit of all.
We are, but I'm going to miss this.
Well,
I am going to, maybe we'll do a podcast of this every once in a while, like totally free-form, long-form conversation. You and I will just go at each other for 2 hours on a podcast.
We'll still get our shots in.
Any other words of wisdom for the audience before we get them out of here?
No, it's Friday. Have a great weekend. And if you're blessed to be able to live here in Happy Valley, or you're just a drive away, come on in. It's going to be another wonderful weekend here in Paradise.
I love it. Here's my words of wisdom. Go to pinegrovehall.com. Check out their jam-packed events calendar. view their seasonal menu, book your reservations. Come on, it really is a cool spot. You need to see it and experience it for yourself. Go to connecthappyvalley.com and sign up for the weekly e-letter. Great curated list of all the events and happenings and places to visit in and around Happy Valley every week, as well as some great commentary. And go to PennStateRiseAbove.org. Get your tickets to go see Terry Smith and Mike Reed and Coach Campbell and the whole group that is trying to keep the spirit of Penn State alive and support a great cause in Penn State's Ability Athletes program. And it's going to be a beautiful weekend in Happy Valley. Get out and enjoy it. We'll see you next Monday at 9 a.m. Take care, everybody.
Hi, Liz.
Hi. You guys are so fun.
Yes, extemporary.